Welcome to the School of Love, the place where miracles are normal. Hello and welcome to the School of Love, the place where we learn practical tools based on scientific research towards improving ourselves, living life to its fullest, and contributing to the best of our abilities to the world around us. I am Dr. Grajdian, and I'm a professor of media studies and anthropology at Hiroshima University. In my free time, I am doing my best to guide you in building up a life of contentment, joy, and fulfillment while applying lessons learned in school to overcome the difficulties, challenges, and insecurities of the real world. In today's video, I talk about the situation in which you or me, so the person watching this video, or the codependent person, and what to do about it. We all know those persons who live to depend on others, depending on them to the extent that they cannot even imagine having a life of their own, and even less that those they depend upon, depending upon them, have a goal in life which might extend beyond depending on them. So this sounds a little bit complicated. So essentially a codependent person is someone who lives vicariously through making other people depending on them and enabling and keeping that dependence alive so that the codependent person, has a purpose in her or his own life. Codependent person depend literally on other people depending on them and keep on doing and have been doing everything in their power to keep the people they deem dependent on them depending on them. They might rationalize this by saying, and most importantly by thinking, that the others need them and cannot live without them, and that they, the codependent person, simply helps the other person survive. But the underlying truth is much, much darker. The situation grows even more concerning as people live increasingly longer lives, which means that young people find themselves often, in fact more often than not, turning into what I might call codependent supply for their codependent parents, in many cases mothers but fathers as well. Classical literature is already full, has some very interesting examples of codependent parents, mothers as well as fathers, and if you read those novels or short stories, you realize how abusive the situation, how abusive the framework actually is. So in my opinion, codependent parents, or codependent mothers or codependent fathers, fall into a subcategory of abusive parents. So this video starts with the definition of codependency and with the enumeration of key characteristics so that one can identify codependency in oneself and in others, and then this video explains 5 plain steps in finding a way out of codependency in case you yourself, as I used to be, are the codependent one. By the end of the video, you will have a complete protocol for dealing with codependency in yourself if you choose to do so. So this kind of healing procedures, always start with the decision to embark on a journey of healing, and this decision is an internal decision, comes from within, and cannot be imposed from the outside. And now, first things first, that is 2 important disclaimers. The first disclaimer serves to strongly emphasize the fact that this YouTube channel, the School of Love, is not part of my educational and research activities at Hiroshima University. It is nonetheless part of my privilege, joy, and sense of duty to propagate and implement knowledge, information, as well as motivation and inspiration outside the limited framework of academic endeavors. Together, we can build up a better tomorrow for as many of us as possible. The second disclaimer relates to the fact that I am a trained musician and musicologist, not a psychologist, therapist, or counselor. The ideas I am sharing in my videos reflect my deep-going preoccupation with life, my own life and other people's lives, and express the results of my experience, research, and for better or for worse, my failures and my recovery from those failures. Recovery which is still ongoing. The ideas expressed in the videos on this channel named The School of Love cannot and may not and must not replace the consultation with specialists in whichever areas of your life you might have questions or you might struggle with. If you are new to this channel, At this moment, I would like to ask you to please consider subscribing, sharing, liking, commenting. Thank you very, very much. This helps us not only with that mysterious algorithm, which seems to dominate the YouTube galaxy, but also with contributing to the expansion of the community of humans doing their best to impact positively the world and those around them by discovering their authentic selves and living life wholeheartedly. Thanks again. And now back to the topic the real topic of this video, which is what happens when you are the codependent person and you, or like I used to be myself, a codependent person, and how to raise above this status, how to heal it, or how to start the journey of healing so that you can function as a normal citizen in the society and in your micro universe, so in your immediate environment. So, what is a codependent person? I have already alluded that a codependent person is someone who lives vicariously through the others, so who makes the others dependent upon oneself, and in this dependency finds one's own purpose of existence. And well, this might come across to outsiders as extreme altruism, and at some point as martyrdom, so being a martyr. But what's important to differentiate here, and what makes this behavior so toxic, or this mindset so toxic, is the motivation beneath it. So the motivation is not simply to do good things for others and to live in the name of the greater good. The motivation is to extract some sort of life purpose, of existential validation from others by doing things for them. So this is like one said that what's the difference to people pleasers? Well, people pleasers are pleasing essentially everyone, while codependency is more happens in more intimate sets up and is more one-to-one, is rather one-to-one, is a one-to-one situation. So the classical example is as I think I have mentioned this before, is a couple in which one spouse, one partner is not alcoholic, is healthy, but the other partner is an alcoholic. And the non-alcoholic spouse or partner, instead of supporting the alcoholic partner of getting out of the addiction, actually enables and encourages the alcoholic partner to stay in that state of alcoholism, so that the alcoholic partner depends on the care and the nurturing of the non-alcoholic partner. And this is the classical example, this is the basic for this concept of codependency, but it can be extrapolated at all levels. For instance, when with ailing parents, with ailing children, with ailing relatives, and of course with other types of addictions like drugs, workaholism, and the external the external explanation is, well, when they drink, they're more peaceful, they are happy. Yeah, what's wrong? So what can be so wrong about that? Or working so hard is bringing a lot of money for the family, so he's supporting the family along. But this is actually long term. If you see it long term, it's very tragic for particularly for the person, for the addicted person. It's very tragic, and for those around him who might happen to love that person. So how does codependency manifest? Is, as I said, from the outside, it looks like extreme altruism. The difference between altruism and codependency is the motivation. So do I do it for others or do I do it for myself? And the way it manifests is a very wide range of mindsets and activities and gestures, starting with a small one in which you encourage someone to need you, like for instance giving someone money, encouraging them to stay at home when they could actually go and work and have a life of their own. This is where it connects, for instance, with what I might label intergenerational codependency, and which might become a problem in the future. Is so what is international codependency is when parents enable and encourage their children not to grow up as functional members of the society and to mature into a healthy way. So this is happening more and more in recent years as we start living longer and longer lives. In the past, it didn't really exist. We have some examples, as I've mentioned before, in literature. So which means it did happen because those authors observed such phenomena and then wrote about them in their books. But nowadays we see it almost as a social phenomenon in which in wealthy societies, so this is again late modern phenomenon on such a social scale, in which parents enable and encourage their children to stay at home, to go and study at the local school, a local university, to find a job locally, to marry locally, to stay as close to them as possible, and eventually they even find a partner and they help them with financially or to buy a house and so on. In itself, all these things are not bad. Of course, many parents, myself included, would like to help our children and to support them in starting a new life. What matters again is the motivation beneath it. If we do it because we want to keep children close, according to, again, a very toxic mindset, so that someone takes care of us when we are old, that's detrimental. If we do it because we really want to give them a chance, a real chance, and to give them a good start in life, and so that they can reach their potential and expand their potential and become functional members of the society and contribute in their own way at their turn to the world around them, that's different. But trying to keep them close to us by essentially catching them within this, or binding them with this very complex network of obligations and things we do for them. This is codependency, and this is intergenerational codependency, what I label intergenerational codependency, because it happens from older generation to the younger, and then it continues to the even younger generation. So in Japan, where there are many multi-generational households, you see this, there's the grandparents or even great-grandparents have essentially controlled their entire life, their children, which are now probably in their 80s or 90s, but it wasn't in a beneficial manner they controlled it, but it wasn't a healthy manner. Then their grandparents have done the same with their parents. They're probably in their 50s and 60s, and their parents are doing the same with the children, some of them being my students. This is how I observed it. So what is there to be done when you observe this kind of behavior in yourself, and not so much the behavior but the mindset? The first step is, of course, awareness. Become aware of it. Become aware. Ask us, and how to become aware of it. The first signs are resentment. So this kind of, when you do something for someone and you expect something from them, but you keep on doing it, and you feel this increasing resentment within yourself. It's like when, as a people pleaser, you feel the same. And what's so wrong about resentment is that it always leads to contempt. And once you have contempt, you cannot respect that person. And respect is such a fundamental emotion among humans. And once you have identified that budding contempt out of resentment, you ask this question. So why am I doing this? Why am I feeling this? These are all very uncomfortable questions, and usually we push them down because we don't want them to come into our conscious mind, and we push even more deeply the answers to those questions, which is again a very, very toxic way of dealing with things. Nevertheless, we have to do it. We have to find answers and then face those uncomfortable answers, because in uncomfortable questions, and even more in uncomfortable answers, lies the truth. So once you have the awareness, once you realize, oh my God, I'm codependent, I'm a codependent person, and I live by sucking the energy, the validation from others. Identify the trigger. So what exactly glues you to a specific person and makes you enable them in their maybe not so healthy behaviors, which then allows them to depend upon you, and which in turn gives you a validation. This is number 3. This validation is actually the reward, the payoff to all these complicated dynamics of doing things for someone you actually care about, so that they become dependent on you, and in their dependence you actually find your validation, your existential purpose, the reason why you are alive to start with. So identify the trigger. What glues you to them? What, and then the payoff, what do you get out of it? Why? And usually this is validation. Why do you keep on doing it? Because there is something apart from the resentment, apart from this growing contempt, there is some sort of good feelings which come with it. And as humans, regardless how great pain is, we are somehow always looking for some positive, some beams of light, some rays of light, so that we can keep on moving. So once you have identified the trigger and then the payoff, the reward, the fourth step, number 4, is to find a healthy way to deal with the triggers, such as deciding in advance, now that you know what triggers you, deciding in advance what you will do when the trigger kicks in. You cannot decide in the moment. In the moment you react automatically unless you have an alternative which you have decided in advance. This is something all therapists will tell you. Find the trigger to whatever unhealthy behavior you have, and then decide in advance what you're going to do when that trigger kicks in. Yeah, and then grasp that healthy alternative. Yeah, and once you do not respond in the usual manner to the trigger, you'll have a lack of reward. This is why in advance you also decide what you'll do in order to get some reward. And usually this reward, so instead of getting it from outside, it's very healthy and very good to get it from the inside. This means, for instance, go for a walk, listen to some good music, dance, something you can do in that moment regardless where you are. Drink a cup of tea, read something nice, listen, watch a movie, but a good movie, something you really enjoy, something you really like. So this is how you slowly you learn to deal with things which trigger you. This is not about resisting the trigger. It's about finding ways and decide them in advance, which then would lead to a different reaction, which then allows you to replace the reward, which will be lacking, of course, with something which comes from within. And once you do this, you'll observe that in time, it will become more and more an automatic response. So the idea is not to resist the trigger. You can do that when you're at your best, but very seldom we're actually at our best. And triggers have a way of hitting when we are not at our best. Not delaying the longing for the reward. This again works when we are at our best, but we are seldom at our best. It's about finding a healthy way once to react to a trigger and then to replace the lack of reward by something which benefits us but belongs only to us. Number 5 is something people seldom talk about, which is be grateful. Develop gratitude for each step on the journey towards healing. So discipline is what keeps us going. We do things because we have to do. I have a different video on discipline. And so we keep on doing things because we have to do. We must deal with them. But also discipline might fail us if we do not have this nurturing, warm-hearted attitude towards us, which comes from developing, expressing, and feeling gratitude towards ourselves for being able to keep on going, and towards every single step of the way, of the journey towards moving forward. And so it's not about clinging to the goal, but celebrating every single step towards that goal. So that would be from me for today. Thank you very much for listening to me, and I'm very much looking forward to welcoming you back here again very soon. Love and peace to you all.